Thank you. This has been the worst week in decades for British Jews. I've worked at the Community Security Trust for almost 30 years, working to protect the Jewish community from hate and to support those who are targeted by it. And I cannot ever remember a week like this one. When Mark invited me to speak tonight, we didn't know this would be the situation, but it feels grimly appropriate that we're here today. I'm going to take this opportunity to share just a little of this with all of you. Right now, here in London, anti-Jewish hate crime reported to the police is running at around 7 times normal levels. Ordinary Jewish people are being threatened, abused, harassed in the street just because they're Jewish. I learned today that my parents' old synagogue has been desecrated with graffiti. This is personal to all of us. Parents are frightened to send their children to school. There are extra security guards and extra policing rolled out across the Jewish community. And why is all this happening? Because 2,000 miles away, 1,200 people, almost all Jewish, but not all, were murdered in a single day by a terrorist organization dedicated to their destruction. And there are some people here, astonishingly, a small number but still, who are so excited by this that they want to join in the hate in their own way. Now, it's not the first time this has happened. Sadly, we all know it's not the first time there's been conflict in Israel and Palestine. But I want to explain why this feels different for British Jews. Last weekend was the greatest loss of life for the Jewish people anywhere in the world since the Holocaust. This was not just another round in a seemingly endless and tragic conflict or an act of warfare. The word terrorism barely does it justice. I'm sure many of you will have read stories about what happened. I hope for your sake you haven't seen the photographs. I will not desecrate this space by describing out loud what was done to women and children in particular. And now we know there will be more war and more suffering in Israel and in Gaza, and more pain and anguish here. Jews of my generation grew up hearing stories of past persecutions like this happening to our ancestors. My great-grandparents came to this country fleeing pogroms in Russia, Ukraine, and Poland. We all learn about the Nazi Holocaust that served to exterminate the Jews once and for all. And we, my generation of British Jews living here in safety, thought we'd left all of that behind in the past, that in the modern world such things could not happen to us again. And yet here we are once more with a new chapter of suffering for us to mourn. And this is a history that Jewish people carry with us. A little over a century ago, the pogroms that I mentioned in Russia left over 100,000 Jewish people dead, with whole communities devastated. And in some of these pogroms, hundreds or thousands of Jews were killed in just a few hours of murder and pillage. And if you read the contemporary accounts from back then of what happened in those villages, the scale, the speed, the unimaginable brutality of that killing was chillingly similar to what we have read about what happened in the kibbutzim and the towns in southern Israel this week. Now, the Jewish world is a small world. There are just 16 million of us worldwide. I always say Wayne Rooney has more followers on Instagram than there are Jewish people in the entire world. And there are only 300,000 of us in this country. Every one of us knows someone affected by this tragedy. Directly or indirectly, we are all linked together in shock and in grief. There are countless touch points that connect British Jews to the pogrom in Israel, and I'm going to tell you about just one of them. One of the British victims who died was a young man called NationalHCAW, 20 years old, who was serving in the Israeli army and was killed defending his people. Nathanael went to the Jewish Free School here in London, which is the biggest Jewish school in the country. When he was just 11 years old, he suffered a hate crime here in London. He was walking to synagogue one morning, and some racist thug barged him to the ground, a little Jewish kid on his way to pray. And he reported that to my organisation, Community Security Trust. And his name is permanently linked to us now. Just one minor detail in a vast network of pain across the Jewish community. And we're now seeing how this has brought a new wave of anti-Jewish hatred here in Britain. I'm not talking about ordinary protest or politics. I'm talking about a minority of people celebrating last weekend's atrocity and seeking out random Jewish people to threaten in a new round of hate and extremism. Now, this is not the speech I expected or I wanted to have to give tonight when Mark invited me a few weeks ago to speak. But in these circumstances, there are some people I must thank, beginning, of course, with Mark and the organisers tonight. But more broadly, every person who has reached out to a Jewish friend, a colleague, a neighbour, a workmate to show sympathy or support, every person who has contacted their local synagogue or another Jewish organisation to express solidarity. There are so many of you, so many of us, and right now the Jewish community is being sustained by the embrace of others. And we should always do this for each other because we will all, in turn, find ourselves in this position. We cannot affect what happens in conflicts overseas, but we can affect how we respond here. Mike mentioned the meetings we were both in this week with senior police, where I was briefing police about anti-Semitism, and Iman Abu Atta from Tel Mama, who I'm sure many of you know, was briefing them about anti-Muslim hate crime. Now, Iman is Palestinian, I'm Jewish, and I've discovered over the years that a lot of people find this a contradiction, that we should work together in this way. But for us, it's the most natural thing in the world. We do it because we share the same values and we share the same goals: to oppose hate, to oppose division, to support our communities, and to strengthen our shared society. And we do it because we have no other way. Thank you.